to my computer.
Okay.
Welcome to Empowering Seniors. This is Katherine Ambrose, your host, and I am just astounded to be on the line here with Darryl Davis, one of my very favorite authors. He's the author of How to Design a Life Worth Smiling About, which is perfect for our Empowering Seniors audience.
Yeah.
And Darryl, welcome very much.
Thank you, Katherine. Thank you. By the way, Katherine, before we delve deep here, I just want to say, I think it's incredible that you're doing what you do for the senior community. And, it's hard to find, a professional that you can trust, especially when you get to those years in your life. And so they're lucky to have you. And thanks for doing what you do for them.
Well, thank you very much, Darryl. I love connecting with positive people because that is an important part of successful aging is positivity, adaptability, and being resourceful. And those that are watching are certainly education-based and resourceful. And Darryl, right now we're in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis and people are isolated in their homes.
Yeah.
We're always concerned about social isolation with everyone and certainly with seniors.
Yeah.
And so what could you share with them, the wisdom from your book and sense on positivity?
Well, that's a big question. There's, it's true that, Katherine, in this, what we're going through right now, it's really challenging because who we are as human beings by nature is to not be isolated. Who we are as human beings is to be connected with one another on a in a physical sense, being around people. And, because of this virus and what we're dealing with, it's taken away a really important element of what it means to be a human being. We're fortunate to at least have, things like this, communication like this, with Zoom and FaceTime. And then there's other social media, Facebook. And I see more and more people, regardless of age, get more involved in social media. And it'll never replace the human contact, but at least it's something. I see people, they're having parties online, celebrating birthdays online. And at least it's some form of connection. So I think one of the things that people need to do is, if they're not social media active, this is the time to learn that. And the other thing is to keep the mind sharp and challenged, right? There's probably an opportunity. I say to people, Katherine, like, this is the time, like I have a piano in my house and, I don't know how to play it. Now, if I really was committed to it, this probably would be a good time while I'm trapped in my house to learn that. So, but I'm doing other things. The point being is that those things that we've always wanted to get to in our life, those files, the paperwork, the cleaning this room, whatever the case may be, this is probably also a good time for people to do that, because then they'll get a sense of accomplishment. And I think if we challenge the mind, have a sense of accomplishment, and stay connected to human beings, I think those are probably the three really important things to focus on right now.
I think that's really what a lot of people seem to be doing. In Kansas right now, people can still go out to businesses that are essential. They can still go out to Home Depot and Lowe's, believe it or not, and get things to bring back to work on their homes. So a lot of people are definitely working on their homes, working on projects. Early on, people were talking about nesting, like cleaning out closets and things like that. I have a feeling that there's probably a lot of people that are just in bed with the covers pulled up over their heads, or just zoned out in front of the television set.
Yeah.
And what is the danger maybe in just kind of zoning out and maybe just disconnecting like that?
Well, I think that, listen, I'm from New York, Katherine, so I'm one of the early adopters of staying in and, the essential business thing I'm not a fan of, because what I've learned so far is that this coronavirus doesn't know if you're essential or not.
Right.
It doesn't look at somebody who's an essential worker and say, oh, okay, I'm going to not infect you because you're essential.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was just heard on the news today that now they're saying that it's in the air, not around, but you can get it from just talking. And so now there's going to be advisory probably coming out that if you are in Home Depot or Costco or something, you should be wearing a mask. Anything that there's a closed room, the supermarket. I say, if we all just kind of stayed in for a couple of weeks and read a good book, we would be so much better as a nation. But that's me. Anyway, I think, that you've heard that expression where it says, when you're faced with fear or challenge, it's either fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another one that's part of that expression. It's fight, flight, or freeze. Like sometimes you see a cat or an animal and they just freeze, like you won't see them. And so I don't think we should freeze, that's for sure. And put our heads under the covers. That's what I said earlier. I think this is the time to perhaps really challenge ourselves to work on something that we've been always meaning to get to. If there was a regret that you would have in your life, maybe now's the time to work on that thing to not have it be a regret.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I think is really important right now.
So speaking of good books, good reads, tell us a little bit about the research that you did for your book and what you learned from that process.
Yeah, that was a hard book to write because the trainer in me wanted to give like a formula or a step-by-step, like here's how you do this. And I think we took a stab at that, and I think we did a pretty good job. But, when you're talking motivation, it's really hard to come up with a formula. There's so many different angles and approaches and ways to start it. It's not like baking. Like baking, there's a science to baking. Like if a recipe says you use, a quarter, or what's I'm trying to think, like a tablespoon of butter, or half a stick of butter. I'm really bad at baking, obviously. I'm good at eating it. I don't want. Yeah, right. I don't want to work for it. But anyway, if let's say it's a half a cup of sugar.
Mm-hmm.
You don't put, if it says a half a cup, you don't put a quarter of a cup, right? That's going to mess it up. It doesn't work. So baking is actually a science. And actually how you put it in together, like putting the eggs in before you put the flour in or vice versa, it actually has a different result. This is what I've learned. And whereas being a chef, like cooking, like steak or something like that, there's so much more creativity to that. There's more freedom. It's not science. And so motivation's kind of like that. It's not baking. It's not like, all right, do this in this order and then you'll be happy. So everybody's got to find, what makes them happy. What's their formula? Mm-hmm. What works for them. I'll tell you a funny story. I was like, I was in Hawaii and years ago and with my family, and I wanted to learn, first time, and I wanted to learn how to surf because you're in Hawaii. That's what they do. So I found a beach bum. Literally, like the guy was old, like he was born on the beach probably. Mm-hmm. And he had the long hair and he was brown all over because he's always out in the sun. So I wanted to pay him to teach me how to surf. So he's telling me how to surf, showing me out, and I couldn't get it. I kept falling and drowning. And this guy got so frustrated with me, Kathleen. He looked at me and says, you know what? Sometimes you just got to find your own way up on the board. And then he swam away, took my money. So the point that I have is that motivations like that, sometimes you got to find your own way. It could be reading. It could be a hobby. It could be relationships, health. Some people find it in working out. Obviously, that's not my path. And so we all got to find our way up on the board of happiness,
What makes happiness worth pursuing? Why is that something to be mindful about?
Well, I think, and part of the science that I found is that um, we're born to be happy. There's been uh, one of the things I show in my seminars is 3D sonograms of children, you know, in the womb, and they're smiling. And when I saw that, I was like, you know what, this is who we are. Like, I don't think we were meant to be put on this planet to be suffering, tired, complaining, upset, unhappy people. I think we learn that.
Mhm.
Most children, I think, are pretty much happy. They learn unhappiness.
Mhm.
So what was the question?
Why is it worth
Why is
being
it debate?
mindful?
Oh,
Yeah.
why is it important? Because that's who we're supposed to be as human beings.
And so talk to us about the smile dose, what smiling does for you physically.
Yes. So there was one of the studies many of the studies that I found is that you and I have 44 muscles in our face that can make thousands of facial expressions.
Mhm.
Unless if you had a lot of plastic surgery, then it would only be five. Well, sometimes you see these people like, "Are you happy?" Yes, I'm happy. I'm laughing. There's nothing. It's frozen because I had a lot of work done. And so we have 44 muscles that can make thousands of facial expressions. Now, when we smile,
Mhm.
we use 12 of the 44 muscles. You ever hear that expression? It takes more muscles to frown than to smile. This
Yes.
is not. This is not
Mhm.
true. It's
Really?
no, it's not true. It's a myth. Because think about it. When you're sad or unhappy, what are you doing? You relax your face. As science, you're only using 10 muscles when you frown, but when you smile, you're using 12. You ever go to a comedy club and after the comedy club you leave, you say, "Oh, my face hurts."
Hmm.
It's because you're using extra muscles than what you normally do. And you're literally giving your face a workout. So what happens when we smile, the muscles, because it's all science, it's all technical, the muscles tell the brain, "Ooh, something good's happening." So what happens is the brain says, "Okay, something good is happening, so let me increase the chemicals associated with happiness." So it's almost like smiling is a light switch. Like if you're in a dark mood, if you go into a dark room, what do? You flip the switch, you turn the light. If you're in a dark mood in your head, when you smile, you turn on the light switch that generates the chemicals of happiness. It's literally physically, mentally impossible to be angry and sad and smile at the same time. You just can't do it.
Probably has a big impact on other people too, especially if you're isolated in your house with family members.
You
Because
better learn how to smile.
everybody feeds off of the energy that's around. So,
It's true. I mean, think about, let's think about not just the human science. Think about like telephones, right? I think it's amazing that you can talk on. Where's my phone? I can take this, right, and I can tell this phone. I can dial a number, and then this number goes out into the world and somehow connects with the exact phone that I wanted to connect to. And then that person answers. Then I say something, it digitizes my voice, throws it up in the air, and somehow the correct phone catches my digitized voice and then reassembles it.
crazy.
It's great. If you were to say this, if you were to tell somebody that this would exist back in the 60s, they would say that's science fiction because it was. That's what they did
Hmm.
on Star Trek with community.
Hmm.
Now, my point here is if a technical device like the phone can do that, isn't it possible that human beings have this invisible antenna that we communicate, that we send out a vibe, whether it's a positive vibe or a negative vibe, that we receive it like a receptor, like a telephone? My mother, I'll never forget what she told me when I was growing up as a kid. She said, you should, because I was hanging out with bad kids, and she said, "Show me your friends and you show me who you are."
Hmm.
And now there's a lot of science about the economics when we hang around other people and how that impacts us, our thinking and our wealth and what we can make. And so, yes, it's important that when you're being around people, that there be a positive energy versus a negative energy. Because what you put out, you're going to get back.
So where in New York are you? How in the middle of all of this crisis is your area, your local area?
Well, I'm in a bunker, and if I told you, I'd have to kill you. Just kidding.
You look like you're in a bunker there.
No, this is my home office. No, I have a beautiful view right in front of my window here. I'm in Wading River,
Mm-hmm.
and which is out by it's on the island, Long Island, and out east
Mm-hmm.
by the Hamptons.
So I don't suppose you work mostly with real estate agents and businesses going and around the country doing keynote speeches and coaching. And what's your thoughts about how people are holding up?
Yeah, I think that I think people. It depends on the person. I just talked to a friend today who, he's having some challenges because his business has totally changed. He's lost. I have many friends that own restaurants, and they're in the city, New York City. They've had to close. A florist who, huge florist, like not just like a mom, but like he had to close. There's so many businesses that have gone out of business, and people handle it in different ways. Some people, in the face of hopelessness, they get closer to God because they have to emotionally. It's like, all right, I got to give it up. So that's how they're dealing with it. Some people, they see it, what's the opportunity here? Some people say, I've been through worse in my life. I can get through this. Mm-hmm. That's one thing that's true about people who've gone through adversity in life. They are taught, they learn how to get through it. And so therefore they call back to that time in their life that if I was able to get through that time, I can get through this time. So, so that's what I find. I find depending on people's lives up until this point and the number of adversities that they had and how they dealt with it then really determines how they deal with this. Some people are stronger. Some people come out stronger because of it.
Yeah. So let's talk about real estate agents, since you spend a lot of your time talking to real estate agents. So many of us went through the Great Recession, and that was hard. If that was your only income and you were all in on real estate, like my husband and I were. In fact, we owned 2 real estate franchises at the time. That was hard. And I do think that has had a positive effect on me today with this crisis. I do feel better because I'm determined that I'm not going to take this as badly as I took that, provided that things go well for loved ones and everything. It's scary. But I think it's really important you learn not to just throw up your hands and that there is light at the end of the tunnel and just have faith. So what are you telling real estate agents today? Let's say new agents that they weren't in the business back then.
Well, I think for what's good for new agents is they don't have anything to compare this to. So, if anybody is new and they survive this, they're going to survive anything. Because this is not, this is going to test a lot of us. This is going to test a lot of us. This is not even like 2008. Some people are putting out bad information. They're saying this is not 2008. Like 2008 was worse for real estate because that had to do with houses and pricing and the bubble and da-da-da-da. So this is not a housing crisis. This is a health crisis,
Mm-hmm.
is the message that some people are putting out there. And I think that's a horrible message because, yeah, I do agree for one point. This is not 2008 again, because 2008 people lost their houses.
Mm-hmm.
Here, 2020, people losing their lives. It's totally different.
Yeah.
We just in the last 2 weeks, we've seen never before in the history of the United States, we've had over 10 million people filed for unemployment. Those are people who buy houses.
Yeah. It's going to have a big impact on everything. And
It's going to happen.
it's so sad with our salons and restaurants and floral shops, just all of our favorite places, and what kind of impact is it going to have on everybody?
Catherine, 90%, as we speak today, 90% of the United States of America have an order to shelter in place.
Mm-hmm.
90% of America. Not all states. That's just the population. So 90% of the state. I don't know what the number of the states are. How many states have the governors have put a shelter in home
Mm-hmm.
order? But I know the number is 90% of America. So if you got 90% of America that's supposed to stay in and not work, now of course not 90% are listening.
Yeah.
Some people that are still running their businesses, and it's unfortunate. But anyway, so I think so. Your question is, what do I tell the agents? For real estate agents, is what I said earlier. This is the time to work on your business, not work in it.
Mm-hmm.
For example, that part of being a successful real estate agent is you should have a CRM, where you have all of your contacts, your past clients, and the software should be staying in touch with people and emailing or mailing. And most agents, they only know how to use 10% of their CRM. There's this whole other 90%. We're doing a webinar next week just on this topic: how to do mail merging from your CRM, how to do emails, how to do social posting, how to input all your past clients and look at the closing date. And in other words, Catherine, I'm telling people, if you're sheltered in, or at least you should be, this is the time to do those things that you've always been saying, oh, I wish I had the time to do this in my business.
Mm-hmm.
Work on the systems, work on the checklist, so that way when it changes, which it will, you'll be ready to rock. You'll be, I'm not into sports, but from what I understand is there's the off season, like in baseball or football, whatever. And, a baseball player doesn't sit on that couch in the off season and, watch TV and order pizza. They're swinging the bat. They're throwing the ball. They're still working on their skill. And this is what real estate agents should be doing.
Yeah. And really anybody, just be thinking about what you can do in this timeout that we have. So you're that much better prepared to hit the ground running.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely critical. And all businesses need to be looking at their CRMs, their contact management software, and figuring out how to use it. And, so coming back to positivity and smiling for seniors that might be watching, and just everyone that's so affected, how they interpret things, how they are interpreting this situation too, is something that you address in your book, that how you interpret your own reality. And how can people reframe this in their mind and not just go completely towards fear?
Yeah. So one of the things that I believe in is, I was talking to somebody today who has a recording studio. He does a lot of great work, and he has a television station, and he's lost about 50% of his clients because they don't want to come in. Again, this is New York. 50% of his business because people don't want to go to the studio. They want to stay in their house. So they're looking at still doing their show somehow, like we're doing here via Zoom and stuff. And so we were on the phone for a couple hours today. I was saying, listen, you have to look at how can you become stronger because of this? How can you reinvent your business? You know, necessity is the mother of invention. You know, if you look, there are so many stories out there about, there's this guy back in the 90s, Trevor Bayless. Trevor Bayless, what was happening during the height of the HIV virus, and Africa was one of the highest hit nations, but they didn't have radio. And they had radio, but there are so many rural areas they didn't have the electronics, so the message wasn't getting out about how to protect yourself and how to avoid contracting this life-threatening, at the time when HIV came out, it was just knocking people off, just like we're seeing with this coronavirus. So what Trevor did is he figured out how to generate electricity without using, a plug or batteries or whatever, and he created the crank radio. Now, he created the crank radio because of the crisis called HIV in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And I can go on with a ton of stories like this, but if we look at the history of America, there's always been, from a crisis, we became stronger. So we learned something. We invented something that didn't exist before. Mm-hmm. I mean, think about it, Catherine. The United States of America was born from crisis. Mm-hmm. It was because we were being oppressed as a society. People were dying, being taken advantage of by the King of England at the time. So we said enough is enough. And from that crisis, United States of America was given birth to. It's in our DNA as Americans to reinvent ourselves and become stronger from the crisis.
So, I would imagine that people will come out of this crisis determined to move forward in their lives. They're making decisions probably like once we get back out there, I really am going to do blah, and quit procrastinating.
Well, I used to say this at the beginning of this crisis. I said, you know what? I think this is like God or your higher power, whatever you want to call it, that was tapping everybody on the shoulder, saying, "Hey, slow down. Mm-hmm. Look at what's important in your life." Now with the number of deaths that we're having and how horrific it's become, I don't know if that's the message, but I don't know what the message is. But like you said, and I agree with you, is that, we're going to become stronger if we look for that. If we look for that, I've said this so many times in my seminars, breakdowns equal breakthroughs. Oh, it's up on my board. I just looked in the thing. Mm-hmm. You cannot have a breakthrough without a breakdown. Mm-hmm. You can't. Mm-hmm. So breakdowns birth breakthroughs as long as you look for it. Test pilots in the armed services, their job was to get into a new plane and take it up in the air and push it beyond its limitations in order to find a breakdown in the mechanics. So that way the scientists and the engineers, they can take that and make the plane better, mm-hmm. have a breakthrough. So this is what we have to look for as in a society. I'll give you, for instance, I don't know why somebody hasn't thought of this already yet. I think I should run for president because I got an idea. Okay. So we just got like 11 million people in 2 weeks file for unemployment. Mm-hmm. We have all of these doctors and nurses that don't have enough equipment to protect themselves, i.e. the masks. We should give these 10 million people some cloth and a sewing kit that make all of the things that we're missing here. Yeah. Sounds crazy, but I'm thinking there's a need and there's people looking for work. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's not the solution really, but my point here is we've got to look for the breakthrough in the breakdown. And, as long as we keep complaining, there are some people that are complaining about how our government was unprepared, which is true, that they didn't look. So I don't want to get into politics of it, but, looking at timelines, you could be accurate about that. But that doesn't help us anymore. So how do we move forward? How do we get stronger? Anyway. So.
Mhm. So looking for places where you can be creative. And I see you also have on there, in a crisis, be aware of the danger, but recognize the opportunity.
Yes, because that came from, I don't know if you can see this, that came from this. You know what this is? Not everybody knows what this is. Some people.
I do not.
It is Chinese for, it's the Chinese word for crisis.
Okay.
But there's two symbols that make the word crisis. So by themselves, this symbol means danger.
Mm-hmm.
And then this one means opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So the Chinese word in crisis means from danger comes opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And I was also saying that to I invest in the stock market. There's I don't do this because I'm not smart enough, but there's a thing called puts. You can buy puts, and what a put is it's a promise to buy a stock in the future at a certain price. But how puts work, there's also calls and puts. Puts is when the stock goes down, you make money.
Mm-hmm.
So you actually can make money when stock prices go down.
Mm-hmm.
So you have some people that hope and bet for the price to go down and they make a ton of money from puts. My point here is there's always a yin and a yang.
Mm-hmm.
Just like that. There's danger, but there's opportunity. There is this coronavirus and there's something on the other side, but we have to look for it.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes we don't know what is on the other side. We just have to have faith that there is something there. I know the toughest challenge of my life, I kept saying, I know there's a reason why I'm going through this. I don't know what that is yet. And I think it took me a good 10 years or better for me to make a decision to start focusing on helping seniors and helping people in the senior living industry and the senior services industries. And that makes me feel better because I feel like what I went through back during the Great Recession, I didn't understand why it got so bad. But now I feel like it helps me relate to people that are going through really challenging things in their life. And for seniors, they're so overwhelmed by so many issues and so many decisions to be made.
Yeah.
And my hope is that maybe during this time that they can keep their spirits up and also be planning for their future and thinking about not procrastinating on the things that they want to do. And you made a good point, reconnecting and with people and just smoothing things out in your life, but also making some decisions about how you can make your life better should there be a crisis of some other kind in the future, or you just want to make your life better, period.
Well, Catherine, again, I appreciate what you're doing. I had one of our coaching students, real estate agent, who had told me about, I'll just give you the punchline. It seemed as though the kids wanted to sell the house for the mother because the mother was living there by themselves. And, of course, the mother was much older, so they put her in assisted living and
Mm-hmm.
it would be better for her, blah, blah, blah. And the sense that I got is that, you know what, I think if the mother had a choice of dying in her home or living, past whatever date that would be,
Mm-hmm.
another couple of years because she got vitamins and medicine in an assisted living, I think they'd rather die at their home. That maybe the kids were not doing it for mom, but they might have been doing it for themselves. And so I think you probably have seen that a million times.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why having somebody like you as an advocate for these elderly people is so, so important, so crucial.
I think that's the instinct of the majority of seniors, is that we want to stay in our home and, forever or as long as possible. And that's their intention. And what we do with our seminars is just invite them to learn what all the different options are so they can take care of themselves and take care of their home and live at home as long as they would like to, and also explore other opportunities. Sometimes when it feels like the kids or the doctor is saying,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
you need to move, that's not appropriate. And as long as a patient or a parent can make up their own mind, um, we need to empower them to do that. That's why our program is called Empowered Senior, and our
Yeah.
television
That's
show is
awesome.
Empowering Seniors, because we want seniors to decide for themselves. We all want to make our own decisions about our life and our destiny.
And
And
I'm sure there's people that you talk to, the seniors, that they would like to liquidate their home and take that money and go somewhere else, wherever that somewhere else would be. But having somebody like you that's been there, done it, and helped so many other seniors and empowered them, you know, you've got experience that that individual senior may not, because they only know their life, what's they've gone through. And so that's incredible what you're doing.
well, thank you very much. And thank you for addressing our audience today.
Sure.
And I think that there might be a few people watching that are curious about podcasting and doing these Zoom interviews and being a public speaker. And so I'm just going to tag on for those people, Darryl. You've had a great success with your career. It helps that you're very funny, that you're a natural comedian. Um, what
Well,
would you,
my wife doesn't think so. She thinks I'm annoying.
you got to have people like that to keep you grounded.
Yeah. Oh, she keeps me grounded.
My family does the same thing too. It's
And
good to
she
have
could.
friends.
She would put me in cement boots and then, you know, take me fishing.
So what would you say to, let's say, business people that
Yeah.
are looking to expand their business by being brave and turning on the webcam? How would you encourage them on that? What's the benefit?
The benefit is, well, depend. I can't say that there's a benefit that everybody should do it. I think there has to be a plan to it. There has to be a reason for it. And you know, I'm seeing a lot of people now because they're stuck in their house. You got TikTok, and you know, people are singing and dancing to music, and so one realtor is like, he just had the Facebook Live him making a cheese sandwich. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on out there. And so I really think, especially now, social media or podcasting and all that stuff uh, should not be done unless you have a specific plan for the long term, because would be a long term thing now, because there are so many people going insane in their houses, becoming actors, producers, writers, and directors, and producing the whole thing. So there's a lot of noise out there right now. And so you've got to be really good, really talented, having a real clear message to cut through that noise. And then when it dies down, when we're able to leave our houses again and go out into the world like it's a movie that we are now allowed to walk amongst the humans, then that social media may die down, and it may not. It may create it may invent new technology, new apps, because of the noise. So there may be another company that says, how can we, you know, up our game in social media and podcasting? So anyway, I think there's so many things that are going to come out of what we're currently in that we don't even know yet.
We're very lucky to have all this technology to help us through this crisis.
Yeah.
Whether it's just ordering groceries to your house or ordering groceries that you can go pick up without going into the store, doing something for your business through technology. It really is such a blessing. And my hope is that we are going to encourage more and more empowered seniors to get online and get active with their phones and their computers and plug in. It's a great way to stay connected with your family and with positive things.
This is the time for seniors to learn that stuff and not be overwhelmed. They have the time. Learn one thing. Don't overwhelm yourself. Just play with it, you know? So
it's really good for their brain. Just like smiling and the chemistry, the good chemistry that your own body creates from smiling,
Yeah.
learning brand new things that are scary and challenging does the same thing to create new neurons and age better.
Yep. That's for
So,
sure. That's for sure.
well, Darryl, thank you so much. I hope that we find some new readers for you and some new fans.
Thanks, Catherine.
And I'll be sharing this with a lot of my realtor friends as well. And I very much appreciate your time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for asking me. Thanks for all that you do. And don't forget to keep smiling.
Thank you. I'll do that. And I'm going to shut the recording off and tell everyone goodbye and thank you for watching. So we'll see you next time on Empowering Seniors.